You just published a new book about your activity as an auctioneer. I would like you to tell me one good story which is in the book.
So I wrote this book because as a very young man, centuries ago, when I started in the art world, I read a book by a French auctioneer called Maurice Reims. The book was called Haute Curiosité, and I was fascinated by that book. It was only anecdotes of the daily life of this great auctioneer in Paris. And I thought to myself, wow, that's an amazing life. I wouldn't mind living that kind of a life. And then I feel very privileged now, after 45 years so far in this art market and in this art world, to have indeed a very stimulating and interesting life. And I think all of us who are active in this art world are very privileged, let's face it. But I always had the desire in me one day to write down some of these anecdotes. Now, through Jeffrey Deitch, I met Bill Stadium, who lives in LA and who is the co-writer of this book. In fact, he is the writer of this book because we spent hours speaking on the telephone over Skype, and the result of those conversations is the book. So while the stories are mine and the anecdotes are mine, it is really written by him in a very, own style and very...
But who is the typical reader?
Effectively. Now, this was not a book that was intended for the art world, but more for a wider audience. And because there is this mystery about the art world where people think it's just a close club for insiders, whereas I always felt very strongly that art is universal, art is accessible and should be accessible to anyone, in the same way that each of us have an instant reaction when we hear a tune. Whether we are music connoisseurs or not is irrelevant. Each reaction is legitimate. Now, exactly in the same way, every single person has an immediate reaction when they look at a work of art, but they do feel intimidated of expressing that reaction. And so I think that books that are maybe popularizing or speaking a little bit more about it may help that easier access to it.
So that's why you are mediatic, right? You even participate to a TV program.
It is for that same reason that I did participate to a reality TV show a few years back on Bravo, to the program which was called Work of Art, The Next Great Artist, a program co-produced by Sarah Jessica Parker. And I remember before...
Always glamour.
No, but I remember before doing it, several colleagues told me, why on earth would you want to do this? And but I just, as I said before, I feel anything that opens up the art world to a wider audience is not a bad thing. And by the way, that program was, every episode was seen by 1.5 million people. There are very few exhibitions in any museum that are seen by 1.5 million people.
Yeah, but you are not a work of art, are you?
Oh, most definitely not. While, no, maybe I refrain from any additional comment here.
But you are a pop auctioneer, in fact.
I cannot make any comments on that. Anyway.